Everything changed in a matter of seconds. Welcome to this NFL Nexus Explainer. Look, today we're tearing down a story of absolute power, and honestly, the terrifying fragility that comes right alongside it. Do me a quick favor, subscribe to the channel, like the video, comment on what you thought, and hey, support the channel by becoming a channel member as we dive into today's cinematic breakdown. Okay, so let's just get right into it, because what we're uncovering today isn't just about the X's and O's of football. It's really about the anatomy of a historic empire that might literally be fracturing before our very eyes. We're looking at an organization split right down the middle, between unimaginable wealth off the field and desperate, glaring poverty on the gridiron.
And that brings us to the big, uncomfortable question we all have to ask. Is the most dominant empire in the NFL quietly fracturing? I mean, to really understand the gravity of this, you've got to look at the sheer scale of what Kansas City has built in the 2020s under Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid, right? This is an organization that completely normalized lifting Lombardi trophies. They made the absolute impossible look totally routine. But now we're looking at a Kansas City Chiefs organization that is currently teetering on a razor's edge. On one side, we have this off-field display of absolute, unrelenting maximalism, a family legacy just flexing its limitless resources. But then on the other side, there's this on-field vulnerability that is leaving front office executives sweating and fans, frankly, breathless with anxiety. The dynasty that defined modern football is suddenly facing a reality they just haven't known in years. True existential doubt.
Section 1. The Empire's Crossroads. So set the scene. It's the spring of 2026. The dust has finally settled on what was a deeply, deeply turbulent 2025 campaign, and suddenly there's this chilling, almost unthinkable phrase echoing through the hallowed halls of Chiefs Kingdom. It's this phrase right here, the two-year rebuild. Now, this isn't just internet chatter. This specific phrase has been circulating heavily in Kansas City circles since February. It's completely dominated local media rounds, it's taking up hours of sports radio, and it has trickled all the way down to the fan base as a very real and very terrifying possibility for the 2026 and 2027 seasons. Let's really just pause and think about what that actually implies. You are talking about initiating a multi-year rebuild right smack in the middle of the absolute physical prime of Patrick Mahomes' career. I mean, every single year you waste of a generational one-of-one quarterback like Mahomes is a historic tragedy in the NFL. Embracing a retooling year while simultaneously walking the terrifying tightrope of championship expectations, that's just the most perilous game a general manager can possibly play. But here's the wild part. While the front office is aggressively bracing for this incredibly tense on-field transition, literally counting every single dollar against the salary cap, the Hunt family is out there completely rewriting the playbook off the field. The contrast is just, it couldn't be more jarring if you tried.
Section 2. Rewriting the playbook. Let's shift gears and move over to the other side of the Chiefs universe to see exactly how this builds. When Chiefs heiress Gracie Hunt, daughter of CEO and Chairman Clark Hunt, announced her engagement to Derek Green back in early April 2026, you got to understand, it wasn't just a simple lifestyle announcement. Within the Kansas City media sphere, this was treated like a major roster update by Chiefs Kingdom. The ensuing wedding planning instantly became this absolute maximalist spectacle. We are talking about high-fashion dress fittings that literally shut down city blocks in New York, sprawling bridesmaid lunches down in Dallas, and engagement photos saturating every major sports and lifestyle outlet in the entire country.
And then she completely stunned the wedding industry by revealing one very specific number: 14. She named an unheard of 14 bridesmaids to stand beside her at the altar. Now, to really put this into perspective, we've got to look at the smallest, most granular details here. Because 14 bridesmaids means 14 bespoke dresses. It means 14 intricate, minute-by-minute schedules that someone has to coordinate across multiple time zones. It means 14 sets of high-end logistics for every single event, from the hair and makeup teams to massive transportation fleets. It is a massive, sprawling, multi-million-dollar production. Planners and industry insiders who have been handling A-list celebrity weddings for decades were quoted as being completely speechless at the sheer, unapologetic scale of it all. And honestly, this brilliantly illustrates the sheer magnitude of the decision. Think about the standard wedding playbook versus Gracie Hunt's formation. Industry research and top-tier wedding planners, they consistently push a minimalist trend right now, usually capping out at around 3 to 5 attendants per side. Right? The goal is to save costs, reduce massive logistical headaches, and just maintain a clean, intimate aesthetic. It's basically the unwritten rule of the modern luxury wedding. But Gracie Hunt looked at that playbook and just tore it to shreds. She built a roster that's actually larger than an NFL offensive huddle on her side of the aisle alone. She didn't just bend the rules, she deployed a formation that literally nobody in the industry runs anymore. So, the crucial takeaway here is this. The old rules don't apply when you refuse to let them. Period. When you are the daughter of an NFL franchise owner, wielding the kind of immense wealth that literally shapes entire cities, every single decision you make carries a heavy, undeniable symbolic weight. This massive off-field abundance sets a huge pop culture trend, essentially giving permission to brides everywhere to just abandon minimalism and embrace absolute excess. But, and this is a massive but, it stands in stark, dramatic, almost tragic contrast to the harsh, unforgiving reality that's unfolding right now on the gridiron. Because while the Hunt family spares absolutely no expense off the field, flying private to coordinate a 14-person bridal party, the Chiefs' offensive roster is suddenly starving for just the most basic answers on it.
Section 3. The wide receiver dilemma. Because while that bridal roster expands to record maximalist numbers, the Chiefs' actual margin for error at the wide receiver position is rapidly and, quite frankly, terrifyingly shrinking. General Manager Brett Veach's calculated risks are suddenly coming due, and man, the bill is incredibly steep. We really have to look closely at this timeline, because the offensive foundation is cracking under the cascading weight of one single player's disastrous offseason. Rashee Rice. Phase 1 hits, the sudden revelation of a hidden knee surgery. And look, this wasn't just some minor scope, this was a serious physical setback that immediately put his overall durability, his cutting ability, and his explosion right off the line of scrimmage in total absolute question. But then, just as the team was trying to process those physical limitations, Phase 2 hit, a sudden, totally shocking probation violation that absolutely sent the local press into a feeding frenzy. And finally, the ultimate devastating blow of Phase 3, jail time. In a matter of just a few agonizing months, a cornerstone of the Kansas City passing attack, a guy they desperately needed to anchor this offense, completely evaporated into a dark cloud of unreliability and severe legal consequences. So now look at the sheer isolation of this receiver room. It is breathtakingly vulnerable right now. Rashee Rice, completely unavailable and totally unreliable. Xavier Worthy, well, despite his blazing, record-breaking track speed and undeniable draft pedigree, he's got a slight frame and simply cannot be counted on yet to carry the entire offensive load against physical, pressing man coverage week in and week out in the NFL. And Tyquan Thornton? The jury is still very much out on whether he can be a legitimate, consistent piece of a championship puzzle, or if his route running is just way too raw. With these unproven, really shaky options left on the depth chart, the huge downsides of Veach's immense gambles are manifesting in real time. Because remember, the front office could have ponied up premium NFL draft capital. They could have secured a profound veteran solution. Instead, A.J. Brown represents this haunting, agonizing missed trade opportunity, just a total ghost of what could have been. The team simply passed on the disgruntled Philadelphia standout, hoarding their resources while their offensive arsenal just rusted away. Section 4. A rebuilt defense. Pushed into an absolute corner by an offense completely devoid of reliable weapons outside of an aging, declining tight end room, Veach is desperately shifting the team's entire identity to try and weather this perfect storm. If they are truly entering a 2-year rebuild, well, the focus has completely, aggressively pivoted to the defensive side of the ball. And if you look at the strategy here, it details exactly how they are attempting to construct a survival raft. First off, the strategy to ground the offense. They made a really prized pickup in relentless running back Kenneth Walker. They essentially have to establish a punishing, downhill run game now because the air attack is fundamentally compromised. But the true painstaking rebuild, that's happening on defense. Veach had to completely reconstruct a secondary that was stripped all the way down to the studs. We're talking about losing 2 starting cornerbacks and a veteran safety. So to stop the bleeding, they drafted Mansour Delane in the first round, banking heavily on his aggressive boundary coverage skills, and they added the ball-hawking Jaden Kennedy on day 3. Up front, they worked desperately to fortify that defensive line by acquiring the interior disruption of tackle Peter Woods, along with the sheer edge speed of defensive end R. Mason Thomas. The bottom line, the Chiefs are getting drastically younger, they are getting exponentially more athletic, but they are incredibly dangerously untested when it comes to the fires of January football. How quickly things gel, and if they do, could determine the immediate team ceiling. That is the quote right there that perfectly and kind of terrifyingly defines the 2026 Kansas City Chiefs. These young, raw, hyper-athletic defensive pieces must click immediately under the masterful but notoriously demanding defensive coordinator Steve Spagnuolo.
Look, Spagnuolo is an absolute legend, right? He engineered that 2007 Giants defense that broke the undefeated Patriots. But his schemes are incredibly complex. They rely heavily on intricate pre-snap disguises and flawless veteran communication. There is absolutely no grace period here. There is no time to just learn on the job. If this young core doesn't gel from the very opening kickoff of Week 1, the entire Kansas City Empire risks a catastrophic structural collapse.
Section 5. The AFC strikes back. Because you have to remember, the rest of the conference isn't just passively watching this rebuild unfold. No, they are actively closing in, and they are smelling blood in the water. The golden days of Kansas City just casually walking unopposed to the AFC Championship game on a red carpet, those days are definitively over.
Just look at the rapidly closing gap in the AFC. The playing field hasn't just leveled, it is completely tilted. The Denver Broncos aren't just some cute story or a minor threat anymore. They are the defending 2025 division champions under Sean Payton. Let that sink in. They have already snatched the divisional crown right off Mahomes' head. Then you've got the Los Angeles Chargers with their bruising, hyper-physical brand of football under Jim Harbaugh sitting right there in the mix, just waiting for a single misstep. Then you look out east. Heavyweights like the Baltimore Ravens, who were built specifically with a devastating ground game to exploit Kansas City's interior, and the high-flying Buffalo Bills, who are absolutely desperate to maximize Josh Allen's window, they are circling the wounded Chiefs. And you can't forget proud organizations like the New England Patriots violently pushing for contention again, and the Jacksonville Jaguars, who are desperate to prove their recent playoff success was absolutely no fluke. The Wolves are at the door, guys, and they are starving.
The ultimate, unforgiving truth of the NFL really boils down to this. An organization can lose the crown just as easily as another steals it. We saw it happen with the fall of the 90s Cowboys. We saw the cracks form in the armor of the 2010s Patriots. The gap between Kansas City and the rest of the entire league now hinges entirely on one terrifying, completely unanswered question. Are the Chiefs simply pulling off a miraculous, on-the-fly reloading phase with Kenneth Walker and a young Spagnuolo defense, or is this the brutal, undeniable beginning of a fatal, dynasty-ending stumble?
Section 6. An unwritten ending. As Gracie Hunt and Derek Green prepare for this sprawling, majestic wedding where two deep branches of football lineage will literally meet at the aisle, with Gracie representing the ultimate billionaire ownership class and Derek carrying the heavy quarterback legacy of his father, beloved former Kansas City starter Trent Green, the dynasty itself faces its darkest, most turbulent unknown out on the grass of Arrowhead Stadium.
A wedding party of 14 bridesmaids showcasing unmatched, limitless power off the field, sharply juxtaposed against an empty, desperate wide receiver room fighting for Bears survival on the field. It makes you wonder, is this the year the Chiefs' crown is finally stolen? Look, I want to hear from you. Leave a comment below on whether you think Kansas City's completely rebuilt roster can miraculously save their season, or if this incredibly dominant era is truly, finally coming to an end. Make sure to subscribe to the channel NFL Nexus, like the video, and definitely support the channel by becoming a channel member so you never miss our next cinematic explainer. The story of the NFL is always changing, and you know we'll be right here to break it all down for you.